So Andrade has been released by WWE. There were some rumors that maybe he had walked out, and I mean, there may be something to that, but it feels like it was a disciplinarian thing. We are going to get into that a little bit because, of course, at the moment it is just speculation, and we have to hear from Andrade's side. We don't know what he's going to say, but it is the big news of the day, so I thought we should sit down and talk about it. But yes, this came out over the weekend. I believe it was Saturday night. I know it was Saturday night because I had just lost my internet championship at Chaos Wrestling. Sad Panda Miller. Actually, Nika Angelo kind of whipped my ass a little bit. These things happen. And I got back into the changing room, and as I was licking my wounds, I asked, anybody else a nerd here? Because Andrade's been released, and nobody seemed to care but me, which is probably smart, all things considered. So, a disciplinarian action that we don't know what it is. And as always, the internet has made up a bunch of stuff. Now, there are reports saying it could be a wellness violation. That could be one of 100 things. You can get a wellness violation in WWE for not, like being there for a test or turning down a test or saying someone's going to test you, but you can't be there. That counts as a black mark against you. So, that kind of thing we need to put over here. It could be 1,000 things, right? And all of these things are going to create controversy. And I don't think we should put that on Andrade until, again, we have a little bit more concrete information. But all the other stuff was that apparently he was sent home from SmackDown. Then other people said that he ghosted WWE and he went back to South America and nobody's been able to get in touch with him. But ultimately, Andrade has gone left. WWE has gone right. It kind of makes me look like an idiot because I had to shift some of my videos around this week. Some of them, I'll make sure I put a comment down there, is about why is WWE pushing Andrade in Phoenix? Whoops. It does kind of make sense. It's very similar to the Wardlow situation. Not that he got in trouble, but I remember being all shrug emoji. Why aren't AEW giving Wardlow his big comeback promo? And it's because he tore his pec. And I think that's just a nice reminder. We should talk about these things. We're very blessed to live in a world where we do have these platforms. But everybody just needs to put some question marks and some allegedlys and some apparentlys to remind you that the conversation, the news can change every day. I'm far more intrigued about this from what we're seeing on the television point of view. It's rare to hear about either company, WWE or AEW, letting somebody go or firing them, I suppose, in this sense. I mean, you're going to have to help me out in the comments, and please subscribe when you're down there as well. I mean, CM Punk would probably be the last one from AEW. That was a disciplinary thing. Obviously, that took on a life of its own. And we knew what happened there because the news broke, whereas with Andrade, we have no idea. But even when he left AEW, there was a lot of... I remember he was in was it the C2? He was in some kind of tournament, and he was winning, and everybody knew that he was going to leave, and there was confusion. Well, why are we letting Andrade leave? Again, if you listen to any of the big news networks, they say that there was controversy there when he left AEW too. Maybe he butted heads with somebody else, which can happen, right? He had a fight with Sammy Guevara. That kind of felt like it was legit, but again, I don't want to just say I didn't see it with my own eyes, but that kind of had a bit more justification to it because Charlotte Flair, who Andrade was married to at the time, was working in WWE, and it makes sense why couples would want to be together. It was the same with Aleister Malachi Black and Zelina Vega. But I believe ever since then, Charlotte and Andrade have divorced, which sucks. It's a horrible thing. I mean, we know that because of the whole Tiffany Stratton promo building up to WrestleMania. But it kind of leaves Andrade in no man's land a little bit. Now, you never say never in wrestling. If I had told you that CM Punk was going to go back to WWE at one point in the timeline, you would have called me nuts. So whatever Andrade's relationship is with Tony Khan, we will wait and see. I mean, does AEW need him back would be a great question. He's a terrific professional wrestler. Like, he is really good. And maybe some of his frustration does come with the fact he doesn't feel like he's being used in the way that he believes he should do. You can call it ego, you can call it arrogance, but most people that have climbed to the tippity top of wrestling are a little bit arrogant and they have a lot of ego to them. Even somebody like Bret Hart, right? He will tell you, and I would stand behind him, that he was one of the greatest wrestlers, or the greatest technical wrestler of all time. And I'd be like, you damn right, Bret. You go shout it out there. But it is a kind of self-belief that you need, and in an industry which is very, well, it's touchy and it's sensitive, absolutely. You may sort of rub people the wrong way. But it all depends whether Tony Khan thinks Andrade is going to be good for AEW and, of course, how he exited beforehand. I think from a talent point of view, he would thrive in any single company. But, of course, there becomes... I think JR talked about this on his podcast years ago. I think it was in reference to Ken Shamrock, but I'll put a big question mark over that too. But Ken Shamrock's big thing, apparently, and why he didn't get a bigger push, which I always questioned, is that he wasn't very reliable. And from a time point of view, so he was always late, and people, oh, Ken, where are we? Need you, this kind of stuff. And so from JR's point of view, who was like head of talent relations, he was like, well, we need to keep an eye on this guy because we're going to make somebody a champion. They needed the John Cena method, right? Someone that would be here, there, and everywhere. So maybe that's what held Andrade back as well. Maybe people just didn't think they could trust him to use, I don't mean trust him in the sense I'm going to leave my keys here. He better not thieve them. But in the sense, what's he going to do? What kind of person is going to turn into work? Is he going to be down for being collaborative on creative and things like that? But he's absolutely got the chops, and I saw a match came up on social media the other day. I can't remember what it was, but it was so long ago. Andrade was still with Zelina Vega. It was probably in NXT. And they did that awesome thing they used to do when Andrade would hang himself up in the middle rope and Zelina Vega would lie beneath him. And I was like, why did we ever not go back to that? It was just so cool. And they did it so effortlessly. So it's not like he doesn't have the charisma side or the sports entertainment side, whatever the hell you want to say as well. But it's absolutely crazy because I thought, and now this one seems to have been backed up as well, that it should have been the Wyatts versus Andrade and Phoenix at Clash in Paris because they'd won 3 matches in a row. I couldn't believe it. The thrown together tag team had won 3 matches in a row. Then all of a sudden the Street Profits were going for it, and over here, and on What Culture Wrestling, subscribe to them. I freelance for them over there as well. I talked about it, and now I look a bit like a fool, but I didn't know the information at the same time. But at least there's a reason for it, and I would rather there was never any disciplinarian things, but at least it wasn't a creative thing. Someone just went, nah, we're not going to do this because it made all the sense in the world. But that, I think they would have become the tag team champions. I really do. I also kind of advocated for bringing them over to Raw because I just thought they were so good. Then you could do 6-man tags against the New Day, which I probably think would have happened. And of course, who would have been the 6th man? It would have been Penta, so Penta and Phoenix are back together. I don't know whether that's why we gave Rey Fenix the Sami Zayn match on SmackDown to remind people, oh, this guy is really good. But it has derailed what is clearly a specific storyline. Even if they weren't going to win in Paris, that would have been a focused on match. The tag team would have been more cemented because of that. You probably could have said, now we're never going to know. But there's a big question about where he turns up because he'd probably go back to CMLL. I don't think he'd put his mask back on because it's very difficult once you sort of loser loses their mask. The stupidest thing I've ever said. You have to get permission from the commission. I love how much the Mexican wrestling community, or whatever word we want to use, respect those masks. But I just don't think he could be a top guy there. He absolutely could be a main eventer for sure. And arguably that's how he starts working with AEW again, or that would be an interesting one. But, he probably wants to make the mega money. That must tie into all of this. I obviously don't know what he's being paid in AEW or WWE. But I would presume when he went back to WWE, he thought he was going to be treated better than he was first time, which was mostly under Vince McMahon after he had been called up from NXT. And I would actually say comparing the two, not that I'm, obviously comparison is the thief of joy. But in AEW, he felt to me like he was a bigger guy from a main event point of view than he was when he came back to WWE, because he came back at the 2024 Royal Rumble. It was great, got a good reaction. And then from there, you had the awesome series with Carmelo Hayes. Maybe this is a bigger issue about the US Championship in general. They had the best of 7, even though it was an accidental best of 7. And neither of those guys ever went after the US title. I mean, we had a few matches, but it kind of felt like we should have pulled the trigger on it, and then you jump to where we are now. And it's very confusing. Love Sami Zayn with it, but the Solo Sikoa stuff, the Jacob Atu stuff, all seems to be thrown by the wayside. But yeah, he was very much a come and go kind of a guy, which is how he ended up in a tag team with Phoenix. It felt like we had to hit reset for the 10th, 15th time, whatever it may be, to try and figure him back into the mix. And it does feel like he was a Triple H guy. Black and gold NXT, Andrade was a huge presence, brings him back once he's taken over as well. So it kind of feels like there's no smoke without fire, and there's more fire that we need to learn about. But I was certainly surprised. And of course, I don't know what the contract states, but firing someone would arguably mean that within 90 days maximum, they could go to AEW. So WWE has quite clearly decided that he's not worth the hassle from their point of view. Again, we need to hear from Andrade. He may see this completely differently. But from a WWE management's perspective, they have gone, he could be back in AEW by the end of the year. We don't care. It's not worth it. And given how competitive all that is now, with obviously this weekend, what is it, All Out versus WrestlePalooza, which is the strangest 2 names you could possibly think of. But it sort of leans against that, because even when Vince McMahon was still in charge, all the names that felt trapped into their contracts and asked for their release, and they weren't able to do it because they didn't want anyone to go to AEW, whereas Andrade could pop back in. Hangman Adam Page in January could have a mystery opponent for Full Gear or Revolution in February, and all of a sudden, bam, there's Andrade. How would people feel about that? I don't know, because obviously, I don't know if this is true. I kind of feel like it's true. I suppose you have a more hardcore base of fans for All Elite Wrestling for obvious reasons, because WWE does feel like the Disney of wrestling. But would they react to him in a certain way because they're going to have read all this stuff? Does the news cycle change anything? I don't know. But it is crazy that someone like Andrade right now is just a man without the promotion, because there were so many people, and a lot of it was tribalism, of course, was, when he's back in WWE, this is going to be the run. He's going to have dinner with his NXT. He's going to win championships. And, apart from the Carmelo Hayes stuff, what can you really say about it? This is completely speculative on my point. because it does seem like this may have happened over both companies. Carmelo Hayes also got lost in the shuffle, and Andrade then got lost in the shuffle. So maybe he started acting out in the same way he did in AEW because he doesn't feel like he's getting the creative or the push that he demands. And again, that's going to be completely, well, that's an independent thing. Some of you will agree, some of you won't agree. But I do find it very strange. Obviously, Carmelo Hayes, as I'm talking to you this Friday on SmackDown, is going to be the next challenger for Sami Zayn. I would bet my hairline, obviously I'm bald, on The Miz getting involved, because quite clear we have to do that feud again. But he's another dude that kind of feels like he got caught up from NXT, number one draft pick, let's do something with him, and just, we haven't really gone all in. I don't want to talk about this too much, because my video that was meant to go up yesterday got delayed, technical issues, YouTube, what a joy, but it will be going up this week about wrestlers that from nowhere have been de-pushed, and Carmelo Hayes is in there, like he's just stuck in the Phantom Zone, much like people like Jacob Fatu, but again, I'm going to leave it there. Otherwise, I give away all my opinions. But it feels, something must have gone on for them not to even, well, this is probably where the ghosting thing comes in as I cut myself off. For WWE and Andrade not to sit down in the same room and try and sort of bash this out before you do say he's gone, he's out, probably does lean into those rumors that he just ghosted them. They were saying, listen, come in, sit down, what can we do here? And Andrade obviously can't get in touch with somebody. Eventually you have to be like, nope, you're done. Although he was, again, we need to see what the timeline is to use that word, because he apparently was escorted out of SmackDown, and people at the time assumed that Andrade would be fired. Then they learned a few weeks later than he had done. Did he start ghosting them after that? Was it he had to go to work? And we don't know, right? Which is why it's very murky waters to walk within. But before we do that, I do think it's just disappointing is a bit strong. It's a shame, I think, is a better word, because, again, when you have somebody that can do what he does, he had some great matches, even if they were, the Carmelo Hayes matches especially, but, you know, a lot of the matches were kind of one-and-done things, so they weren't like elongated feuds. He didn't really get any promo time. I can't think of him speaking on the microphone once. However, he was very, very fun to watch, very, very talented, and it's rare that he would drop the ball in that guy. So I don't know what he does. He could go to New Japan, I suppose. I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe it's a New Japan CMML kind of a deal. Do they work together anymore? I get confused. It's so wishy-washy. But the point is that AEW does tie into that trifecta as well. I mean, you'd have to have a big sit-down conversation with Tony Khan, I suppose. The thing is, I don't mean this from Andrade's point of view, because, again, just to double down for the 72nd time, he is awesome. They don't really need him from an in-ring talent point of view, because they got loads of people. There's a bunch of people that can't get on the show right now that are probably, well, they're right there, so they're waiting to go. It's not like all of it. I don't think Andrade is going to come into AEW and all of a sudden it's going to change the company around and TV ratings are going to be through the roof, because they have a lot of those guys. So maybe it makes more sense to focus on the people you do have on your books. He did get fired, and I hate this so much, but I think you have to talk about these things, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. He will be dubbed an ex-WWE guy now because he got fired. We'll go with the word fired, released, along with the company. It's not like a Ricochet who wanted to leave. His contract came up and he wanted to go to AEW. For some reason, you get less hate that way. And I think it's ridiculous because there was only one big company for 20 years, which was WWE. So nowadays, there's a large generation of guys that have to be ex-WWE guys, like Claudio Castagnoli. But to call him an ex-WWE guy is ridiculous. He wanted to get to the highest platform possible, make as much money as possible for his very risky profession that he partakes in, but now he just finds himself in AEW. He does a great job. He's awesome. He's one of the most underrated wrestlers ever, and I basically love the dude. But, you have to make your means somewhere. So what if they're ex-WWE guys? As long as they can come in and contribute to your product, I don't think you need to worry about where they came from. So, if Andrade can actually come in and be a plus, then of course you should hire him. But you do have to think about that as well, sadly, if you are Tony Khan, who is essentially responsible for a lot of the PR too. You are going to get people on surprise, you left WWE and he went right back to AEW. But if he got into a feud with Kyle Fletcher randomly for the TNT title, and it's some of the best matches of the year and we're all loving it, who gives a damn, man? What do I care? Right? That's just business stuff. And I understand why we get into it, because it's behind the scenes and it's real life and it's like a soap opera. But you find me any, office or environment of work where people don't fall out with each other and sometimes punch each other in the face. I'm sure it's more emotionally charged in wrestling because you get to do that in the ring as well. So violence can be the answer. But from a fan's point of view, I think it's a shame. I think that given it was Andrade's second big run, we could have done more with him. We didn't. Again, maybe it's on him. Maybe it's on WWE. I don't think that this story is twofold. I don't think the story is done being told, so we'll definitely update it as and when we do get there. I think he'll end up in AEW or a WWE eventually. It may not be for years, but he will be back among one of them at some point because everybody does this. You think they're gone. They're never going to come back. Even the Ultimate Warrior almost came back to the WWE in 1997. He was this damn close, which must have been awful for Bret Hart, by the way, because Bret Hart had just left for WCW after Vince McMahon had told him, I cannot afford your deal. And you can find it. It's on the internet, all the information. But the deal that he was offered in 1997, the Ultimate Warrior, was massive. And yes, that means he would have been part of the Attitude Era. He would have been a part of WrestleMania 14. I've always had this weird idea that he probably would have faced The Undertaker. And of course, WrestleMania 14 was Undertaker versus Kane. So maybe we would have delayed that or moved it around a bit. I think it was September that the contract offer was offered. Again, my sentence structure today. And then Kane comes in October. That may be wrong by me, though. And again, that's just something I came up with in my head one day when I read about this. But I think Andrade will go somewhere. He's probably going to have something written into his deal that says you can't do this, you can't do that. But, there's so much information we don't know. Maybe Andrade doesn't want to go back to AEW, right? Maybe something happened there that he feels personally assaulted by, personally affronted, and he wants to go somewhere else. I think for us, it's just upsetting because you don't want to see a waste of good talent. We want to see them perform because we're very lucky as fans that we don't have to worry about all the jibber-jabber. We do talk about it a lot, and somehow it does come our way, but it doesn't affect us. Well, actually, it probably does affect a lot of people when they are watching because we make judgments of these people. That's just the life, that's just the world. Point is this, Andrade is gone. We shall wait and see what does happen. And it just goes to show, 2025 right now is the maddest year of all time. The announcements alone that we've had over the last month, I'm totally upset. WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia, John Cena versus Brock Lesnar being the main event of WrestlePalooza. WrestlePalooza apparently being, aimed at being turned into a SummerSlam or Royal Rumble. You pick the name WrestlePalooza. I have so many questions about that and just a billion other things, but I still love where wrestling is right now. And long may it continue, and long may everyone continue to grow. So sick and tired of the people that want wrestling companies to die. I think you're all sociopaths, just so you know. But now you are here, please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Drop me a comment below. You must have things about this. And as always, it'll be split down the middle. Hopefully that's how I've come across here today, because yes, we need to hear from all sides. But, I'm sure some of you are like, you can't be a bad person, not a bad person, but you can't break disciplinary stuff and expect to stay at a company. And other people will be fans of Andrade. So yeah, let me know down there. Click the video on the screen, which is my predictions for WrestlePalooza, which goes down this weekend. Otherwise, I just did all that. Watch alongs, patreon.com/Simon316, $5 a pop. And we just did The Undertaker versus Kurt Angle versus The Rock Avengers 2002. Very fun match. Check out my new fitness channel, link down there. Otherwise, go to mine.com/Simon. Get 10% off good fitness supplements. Simon316 and Simon Miller. Just type them into all social medias and Big Cartel and Pro Wrestling Tees and TikToks and cameos. Be my pleasure to do that for you. And let's see where we are next week. Somebody else will probably be, start their own wrestling company called Cage Macho. I don't know what I'm talking about. Go draw a line under their hair. Have a good week, my friends. I'll see you soon.